Welcome. Today, we're going to be exploring the source material on a really extraordinary cinematic journey.
We are. We're looking at the professional life of a figure whose face, whose influence is just pretty much unmatched in international character acting.
And that figure is Udo Kier, known to everyone, of course, as Udo Kier.
That's right, whose life spanned from 1944 to 2025. And the first thing that just jumps out from all the material is the sheer volume of his work.
It's staggering.
Yeah, we're talking about a career that covers well over 220 films, decades and decades of just constant creative work.
And before we get into the details of that incredible career, we should, of course, respectfully acknowledge why we're having this discussion right now. Udo Kier passed away very recently on November 23, 2025. He was in Rancho Mirage, California, and he was 81.
The huge loss. A really monumental screen presence.
It is. He brought this particular, intense, and often kind of unsettling energy to every single role, didn't he?
To everything. It didn't matter if it was a tiny German art film or, a massive Hollywood blockbuster. He was always Udo Kier.
That is the perfect way to put it.
And that's how the sources really define him. He's not just a character actor, he's a specialist. Renowned for playing these eccentric and deviant figures, as they're often called.
Right.
And what's crucial is how he translated that persona across completely different film cultures, from the European art house scene to, big American commercial movies.
So our goal here is to really trace that path.
Exactly.
Right.
From the absolutely incredible circumstances of his birth right through to his very last role on screen.
Well, when you start looking at the documentation of his life, that starting point, it really just stops you in your tracks.
It does.
It feels less like a historical fact and more like, I don't know, an origin story written for a movie. We have to start there.
We have to. The resilience you see in his biography starts, literally, from the moment he was born.
He was born in Cologne, October 14th, 1944.
So, Germany, right at the very end of World War II. And the records state that just moments after he was born, the hospital was bombed by the Allies.
It's unbelievable.
And the reports confirm it. He and his mother had to be physically dug out of the rubble.
That's a life defined by immediate, profound trauma from the very first breath. It's hard not to see that as setting the course for a life lived, a little on the edge of things.
It absolutely creates a kind of foundational myth for him. And that harrowing start was then compounded by the fact he grew up without a father.
In that very difficult post-war period in Germany.
Exactly. But what's so fascinating is that the details of his youth are in such stark contrast to the screen persona he'd later build.
Right, because he was what, an altar boy?
An altar boy and a chorister, yeah.
So the man who had become famous for playing vampires in Jack the Ripper, he started his performance career singing hymns. That juxtaposition is just incredible.
It is. But you could argue it suggests a deep, early familiarity with ritual, with formality, with a kind of theatricality.
Qualities he would definitely repurpose later on.
For sure. But the real catalyst, the thing that set him on the path to acting, came when he was 18.
That's when he decided to move to London. And it wasn't even an artistic decision at first, was it? It was practical.
Entirely practical. He went there specifically to learn English.
But that one move just positioned him perfectly for the global career that was about to happen.
London in the mid-'60s. It was the absolute epicenter of a cultural explosion. So by bridging that gap between, say, German artistic seriousness and the Anglo-American counterculture, he was just perfectly placed for what came next.
And what came next were these roles in the experimental and cult film world.
His official start on screen was actually pretty humble. He was cast in the lead role of a short film, Road to Saint-Tropez, back in 1966.
Just a prelude, though.
Just a prelude. The real defining moment, the one that put him on the map for every cult director out there, came about 7 years later.
And we're talking about the infamous 1973 film Flesh for Frankenstein. That role, Baron von Frankenstein, it basically paved the way for his entire career after that. It established him as the go-to actor for that intelligent, stylized art house horror.
It did more than just establish him in the genre. It cemented his image in a really specific part of 1970s counterculture.
Because these films were produced by Andy Warhol's company.
Exactly. Flesh for Frankenstein and its immediate follow-up Blood for Dracula in '74 were both directed by Paul Morrissey. They were designed to be shocking and witty and just profoundly irreverent takes on those classic movie monsters.
So they weren't just horror films?
Not at all. They were like cult cinema manifestos. And Udo Kier was their pale, aristocratic, slightly unhinged face.
And that pairing of Frankenstein and Dracula right at the start, That immediately associated him with a certain kind of vampirism, of historical deviance that just followed him his whole career.
It became an archetype he returned to again and again. The sources point out all these appearances in vampire-themed films. It shows he was really willing to embrace that role, whether the project was serious or, pure exploitation.
We see it later in things like Die Einsteiger in 1985.
Mm-hmm. But also in huge Hollywood films, like Blade in 1998, where he played the vampire Dragonetti.
Right. And even in films that maybe had, let's say, less lofty artistic goals, like Shadow of the Vampire in 2000, or the video game movie Blood Rain.
Exactly. It shows this incredible consistency. He never seemed to be precious about the medium. If the part needed his specific kind of aristocratic menace, he was there.
But this era wasn't just about cult horror. It was also the beginning of these huge, career-defining collaborations with major European directors.
And that's what gave him his artistic credibility. You're talking about giants of German cinema and international masters of horror.
So someone like Rainer Werner Fassbinder.
Yes, a cornerstone of the new German cinema. Fassbinder was known for being incredibly prolific, relentless, and his films were these challenging social critiques.
So working with him immediately validated Kier as a serious actor in Germany.
Absolutely. And then internationally, he was sought out by directors who specialized in the provocative, the surreal.
Like the Polish director Walerian Borysik.
Right. Known for his sort of erotic historical fantasies. And, of course, the Italian horror maestro Dario Argento. We should pause on Argento's masterpiece, Suspiria, from 1977.
He's in that, but it's an uncredited role, isn't it, as Dr. Frank Mandel?
That's right. Uncredited, but the role is vital. Suspiria is a film that's all about its hyper-saturated nightmare visuals, its dream logic.
And his presence fits that perfectly.
Perfectly. He's this intellectual, very controlled, but slightly sinister medical figure. It just slots right into the film's whole atmosphere of decay and hidden madness. These early collaborations really ensured that by the time the 1980s came around, Udo Kier was already a globally recognized name for any filmmaker who wanted to push boundaries.
And that recognition really brings us to the core of his critical career. These collaborations that solidified his reputation as an actor who could serve these very specific, often very demanding visions of the world's greatest auteurs.
And his ability to become, a living part of a director's visual and thematic language. That's what's so incredible about this period.
It seems like his career became less about building his own persona.
And more about adapting that persona to fit the needs of visionary directors. It's a testament to his professionalism and, I think, a real lack of ego.
And the sources point to one professional relationship that just stands above all others in its depth and its consistency.
Lars von Trier.
The Danish filmmaker Lars von Trier, it started back in 1987 with the film Epidemic.
And that von Trier connection is it's undeniable. It's foundational. After that first film, he appeared in almost every single movie von Trier made.
It was just saying something.
It's saying a lot. This is a director who's notorious for his demanding sets, controversial themes, psychologically draining projects, and he trusted Kier implicitly for over 30 years.
It speaks volumes about Kier's reliability. So when we say almost all of von Trier's films, which ones was he not in?
The list is surprisingly short, really, given the scope of von Trier's work. He wasn't in The Idiots, The Boss of It All, Antichrist, or The House That Jack Built.
So to miss only 4 films in that whole challenging body of work, it suggests a really deep professional bond.
A near constant one.
Let's talk about a few of those key collaborations to understand what Kier brought to them. Their earlier work, like Europa from 1991, is crucial.
Oh, absolutely. Kier played Lawrence Hartman in that.
And Europa is this masterpiece of stylized noir, right? Very influenced by German expressionism.
Totally. It demanded these heightened, very formal performances. And Kier, with his angular features and that controlled intensity, he was the perfect fit. He embodied the moral ambiguity and psychological strain of post-war Germany.
A theme that echoes his own birth story. Again,
his presence is essential to that film's visual language, which uses all this rear projection and complex camera work.
And even as von Trier's style changed, moving into those later, bleaker dramas, Kier was still there. We should look at his roles in Melancholia and Nymphomaniac.
Right. In Melancholia, the film about, planetary collusion and depression, Kier plays the wedding planner.
It's a subtle role, but really powerful.
It is. His precise, almost brittle formality is this sharp contrast to the cosmic despair all around him. He brings this detached, slightly absurd professionalism to the literal end of the world.
And then in Nymphomaniac, he's this recurring motif as the waiter?
Yes. The waiter he just appears subtly throughout that whole two-part exploration of sexual identity. It's a quiet role, but he anchors the film. He's like this silent, knowing observer to all the drama.
It proves his enduring relevance to von Trier. He could anchor these huge psychological moments without needing to be loud or theatrical.
But his work as an auteur's muse goes so far beyond just Scandinavia. The list of collaborations it's a who's who of international art cinema.
In Germany, it wasn't just Fassbinder.
No, he also worked with Christoph Schlingensief, another experimental director known for pushing political and artistic boundaries with these aggressive, often controversial works.
And the international scope is just staggering. It suggests his unique look, his presence. It just transcends national boundaries.
Look at the names. Werner Herzog,
Of course.
known for films about obsession and failure, and Guy Maddin, the Canadian surrealist. Kier was prominent in films like The Forbidden Room.
And Maddin's films often look like they were rediscovered from the 1920s.
Which proves how timeless Kier's screen presence really is. He fits right in.
And he's still showing up in contemporary acclaimed international films like the Brazilian director Kleber Mendonça Filho's film Bacura.
Yes, from 2019.
Yeah.
Bacura is this challenging political Western/horror hybrid.
And casting Kier in that, it immediately gives the film a certain international weight. It signals to the audience that this isn't just any genre film.
It's operating on a higher level. And even in America, he worked with directors like Alexander Payne, known for his subtle, dark humor. He was in Downsizing.
So his ability to just move between these completely different cinematic worlds.
From German New Wave to Brazilian political cinema to American satire. That's what defines him. He gave directors this ready-made symbol of exotic, maybe slightly untrustworthy sophistication.
Let's pull out a couple more examples from his European work that show the extreme range he was trusted with.
His willingness to embrace controversy is a big one. The sources mention his role as Adolf Hitler in a 1989 German film.
100-year Adolf Hitler.
Right. And casting him in a role like that, which needs both historical weight and dramatic extremity, it just says so much about his capacity to convey this intense authority and darkness.
And similarly, much earlier, his role as Jack the Ripper in Lulu in 1980.
It confirms the pattern. If a European director needed an actor to embody the very essence of historical criminal darkness, the psychological monster, Udo Kier was the first call.
The consistency is remarkable.
He was the embodiment of cinematic deviance. By 2012, his career was already so rich that it became the subject of a documentary, ICHUDO, Der Schauspieler Udo Kier.
MUDO, the actor Udo Kier.
And that recognition continued. Right up to his 80th birthday, there was another documentary in 2024, Udo Kier, Dracula Trash, a Dandy Magnetique.
It speaks to his global cultural significance that he was getting these retrospectives even before he passed away.
And this is where the story takes a really sharp, and you have to say, extremely lucrative turn.
Right. The transition from the demanding, often non-commercial world of Fassbinder and von Trier
to appearing in some of the most visible, high-grossing blockbusters of the 1990s. It just shows this incredible professional savvy.
It's like a genre shift in his own life. And this pivot brought him this huge recognition beyond the art house circuit. His face became instantly recognizable to casual moviegoers.
People who might not have known the name Udo Kier, but they instantly understood the cinematic shorthand he represented.
He became Hollywood's go-to for the
eccentric European menace. His casting was often a deliberate, sometimes quirky nod to his cult status. Directors used him to inject a specific flavor of sophisticated villainy that American actors just couldn't quite do.
So let's run through some of those iconic mainstream roles, and we have to start with one of the biggest comedies of the 90s.
We have to start with Ron Camp in Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, 1994.
That film defined a certain type of comedy for a generation.
And his performance, which is so formal and tightly wound, is the perfect, hilarious contrast to Jim Carrey's boundless, chaotic energy. He's the European straight man to American absurdity.
And he didn't shy away from the action and cyberpunk genres that were emerging then either.
Not at all. He's Ralphie and Johnny Mnemonic with Keanu Reeves in 95. Then he's Curly and Barbed Wire with Pamela Anderson in 96.
So whether it was high-tech sci-fi or low-budget action, he delivered that same signature chilling strangeness.
And his versatility even extended to family films, albeit ones with a dark European sensibility.
Where his past roles as Dracula and Frankenstein suddenly become very relevant to a casting director.
Exactly. He's the villain, Lorenzini, in The Adventures of Pinocchio in 1996. His presence just brings this necessary sense of dread to that classic fairy tale.
And what's really bizarre, as the sources point out, is that he came back for the sequel in '99.
The New Adventures of Pinocchio. And he's playing Madame Flambeau as well as Lorenzini.
So effectively, he's in a dual role that includes cross-dressing.
Which just highlights the confidence directors had in him. That he could inhabit absolutely any bizarre corner of a script they threw at him.
But maybe the most jarring juxtaposition of his career came in 1998.
In a film that basically defines American maximalist action cinema.
That would be his role as the NASA flight psychologist in Michael Bay's Armageddon.
I mean, just think about that. The leading man for Lars von Trier, an actor known for these highly intellectual, challenging European films,
is suddenly sharing screen time with Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck in a movie designed for pure spectacle.
It's incredible. His presence was just shorthand for this exotic, high-stakes competence. He was there to inject cinematic flavor into a very American disaster movie.
And his visibility in the 90s wasn't just limited to movies. This is the decade that cemented him as a global counterculture icon through these surprising ventures into the music world.
This is where his name becomes completely inseparable from boundary-pushing pop culture, and specifically with Madonna.
Right. In 1992, Kier appeared in photos in her infamous, very provocative book, Sex.
And this wasn't just a casual thing. Sex was one of the most discussed, most scrutinized cultural products of the decade. It instantly rebranded a European art house actor into a global icon of sophisticated provocation.
It was a very conscious choice to align himself at the forefront of cultural controversy, and that collaboration continued right into her music videos from the Erotica album.
Yes. He's a party guest in the video for the title track Erotica, and then he plays a lover in the video for Deeper and Deeper.
By having him in those projects, it's like she was leveraging his established persona.
She was. He helped give the videos this undeniable element of European art cinema seriousness, even within the context of mainstream pop.
And his music video work went far beyond just Madonna. He was dipping into all sorts of genres.
He was everywhere. He's in the video for the new metal band Korn's song Make Me Bad. He plays the commander, which fits their aesthetic of psychological torment perfectly.
And he's also in the video for that huge crossover hit Let Me Blow Ya Mind by Eve and Gwen Stefani.
As a party guest, yeah. And even earlier, he was in a Supertramp video, You Win, I Lose. And in Germany, he was in a video for a band called Raufaser.
So this ability to just appear for a few striking moments in these highly visible, diverse pop culture contexts, it just amplified his unique brand recognition immensely.
As we move into the 21st century, the sources show how his very distinctive delivery and his visual identity translated perfectly into new media.
Right, specifically voice acting, video games, animation. His presence alone, even just his voice, was enough to convey that necessary eccentric or villainous quality.
It just shows how powerful his voice and his mannerisms were. The specificity of his sound, that measured German-accented cadence, was a valuable commodity.
And we have to highlight what is probably his most iconic performance in the gaming world.
The psychic villain Yuri.
In the huge Command & Conquer real-time strategy series.
The casting for Yuri is just brilliant. The Command & Conquer games back then used these high-production, live-action cutscenes, often with cult actors. It was this unique blend of cinema and gaming.
And Kier wasn't just the voice.
No. He provided the voice for the Psy-Corps, but he was also the physical actor in the cutscenes for Command & Conquer. Red Alert 2 and its expansion, Yuri's Revenge.
His casting as the telepathic mastermind was just perfect. It gave the character instant sophistication and real menace.
And his voice career went deep into animation too, often lending real gravity to darker cartoon figures.
He had a number of roles: the music master in Justice League, Herbert Ziegler in The Batman.
He also voiced Ivan Bond in the animated film Metropia. But maybe the longest running and most unexpected was his role as Professor Pericles in Scooby-Doo, Mystery Incorporated.
And Professor Pericles wasn't just a one-off character. The sources say he voiced that character in 17 episodes.
17 episodes. That's a huge, consistent commitment to an American animated series for a European art house icon.
It really is.
It just speaks to the demand for his specific vocal talents. Professor Pericles was a highly complex, manipulative villain, a sophisticated parrot mastermind. Kier's distinct accent and that chillingly calm delivery made him the ideal voice for a calculating, overarching antagonist in a kid's cartoon.
And this willingness to commit to non-traditional media continued in his later game work, too.
He did voice work for the huge 2017 game Call of Duty, WWII. More recently, he was the voice of Eric in the horror game Martha's Dead. And he even appeared in the trailer for the Hideo Kojima game, OD.
cementing his relevance in the vanguard of visual psychological entertainment right to the end.
Now, if we shift to his personal life, the sources give us a necessary glimpse into the man behind all these intense roles.
Right, providing context for his identity.
We know that in 1991, after his breakthrough into Hollywood and pop culture, he moved to Palm Springs, California. That became his long-term residence.
And crucially, the sources confirm Udo Kier was gay and was open about his sexuality his entire life.
Which is significant, especially considering the often conservative nature of the film industry during the mid to late 20th century, both in Hollywood and in Europe. It shows a remarkable professional confidence.
It does. It suggests his focus on the craft was so absolute that his personal life was just not an obstacle. And this is perfectly captured in a perspective he shared in 2021.
He said, "No one ever asked. Maybe it was obvious, but it didn't make any difference because all that mattered was the role I was playing. As long as I did a good job on the part, no one cared about my sexuality."
Which highlights this powerful professional focus where the work always came first, but he never felt the need to hide who he was.
And his life was so well documented that, as we noted, that 2024 documentary was released to celebrate his 80th birthday, a final testament to his legacy.
And to conclude his professional journey, the sources confirm his final film role was as the character Hans in The Secret Agent.
With a listed release date of 2025, just before his passing in November of that year, it marks the culmination of 6 decades of unparalleled contribution to global cinema.
We've covered an extraordinary amount of ground here, a career spanning over 220 films. And his unique ability to pivot seamlessly from experimental European art house to massive blockbusters and then into the niche world of video games. It's truly remarkable.
He leaves behind an impressive, eclectic body of work spanning 6 decades, all defined by that unmistakable intensity.
What's most fascinating, looking at the entire arc of his career, is how he built it based on a very specific, recognizable intensity.
That look, that voice, that aristocratic edge, and this consistency made him a globally reliable casting choice. It allowed him to be used by such diverse filmmakers, from the demanding intellectualism of Lars von Trier to the populist spectacle of Michael Bay.
His status as a character actor who moves so fluidly between the absolute peak of global art cinema and mainstream commercial media is, well, it's arguably unmatched.
So when you consider his consistent casting throughout his career, as Baron Frankenstein, Count Dracula, the wicked Lorenzini, the dark artist Lawrence Hartman, the psychic villain Yuri, how might this career-long pattern of using Kier to explore these cinematic concepts of deviance and intensity, how might that influence our broader understanding of cinematic identity and the profound power of typecasting? It's a question that really defines his enduring presence.
That is certainly something for you, the listener, to mull over as you revisit his incredible body of work. It marks the true impact of a global screen icon. Thanks for listening.